All right, sorry I'm getting this video late, and sorry I had some technical issues that prevented me from doing videos the last couple of weeks. This week we're dealing with Chapter 7, which is actually kind of three topics in one. It's parties, campaigns, and the electoral process. Um, a 20th century American political scientist by the name of E.E. Schattschneider observed that democracy is unthinkable save in terms of parties. And what he meant by that was that democracy requires a focal point for voters, that individually people have difficulty identifying and pursuing their political and economic interests. And so they need these aggregating forces. We political scientists call them intermediary institutions. These are, the things they're not necessarily formally part of government. In fact, the media is another one of the intermediary institutions, along with interest groups, which will be our subject for next week. But we need these institutions to help us make sense of the world. And we know that if a person has a D by their name or an R by their name, they're going to behave a certain way with in political office with the power that they have available to them. And so we need political parties. They help us to make sense of the world. Now, the United States is one of the few countries that actually has a two-party system. And why is that? That's something that I want you to explore as you read the material this week. And then, basically, if you want to change, if you want to have, kind of a multi-party system, what would you have to do in order to get to that point where, where someone other than a Democrat or a Republican would have a realistic chance of winning the presidency or federal office or anything like that? Campaigns and electoral processes are again very similar. Elections are sort of the lifeblood of a democratic polity. Voters have to understand, they have to believe to some extent in the legitimacy of the electoral process in order for elections to really take hold and have the kind of confer the kind of legitimacy that you really want them to confer in the election process. And so candidates, you have to identify people, parties, recruit, candidates, put themselves forward to the political parties. That is sort of the process. You have to campaign on specific issues. You have to know, for example, in Oklahoma, what kinds of issues will get you elected as either a Republican or as a Democrat. Obviously here in Oklahoma, you want to campaign on family values. You want to campaign, to keep the economy as deregulated as possible. If you were a Democrat, how would you run as a Democrat here in Oklahoma? That's an interesting question because frankly, Democrats have great difficulty winning elections in this state, even at the state and local level. Voting likewise is really interesting. I think it's important, like federalism, you go through specific periods where you have different systems where the parties kind of are exchanging majority status. At this point right now, we are clearly in a evolutionary phase where neither the Republicans nor the Democrats have been able to establish a clear advantage within the electorate. Partly that's a function of the fact that while Democrats have great strength in the large urban areas and in the urban states, Republicans have great strength in those small rural areas. And so they are majorities unto themselves in those areas of their strength, but they confer different advantages within the governing process. Increasingly, it appears that Democrats have somewhat of an advantage within the electorate as a whole. There are probably several million more Democratic registered voters than Republicans. But at the same time, because there are more smaller states, Republicans have an advantage in seeking control of the Senate, even though right now the Democrats have control of that body. So again, like the last week where we're dealing with two chapters, there's a lot of material to try and absorb. So make sure you do your reading early. Make sure you get that first post in no later than 11:55 on Tuesday. And then let's have a nice reasoned discussion. I think last week's discussion was pretty good. So I hope we can keep up that momentum and do a good job addressing the material.